Please proceed to the highlighted route.
Reports.
We're out here now to get the masks off.
In Illinois, local school board officials are feeling the heat from angry parents who've had enough.
It's my children. They're my responsibility.
But only 39% of 5 to 17-year-olds are fully vaccinated, and the CDC continues to recommend universal masking in schools.
Nevada could become the 10th state to ditch masks on Thursday. Car insurance companies are raising rates now to keep up with inflation.
Insurers are seeking to boost premiums by 6 to 8% on average, and in some states by double digits. They cite the higher cost of car repairs, replacement parts, and car rentals, due in part to supply chain disruptions. Insurance industry analysts say traffic is back to pre-pandemic levels in many states, and so are accidents.
That's CBS's Linda Kenyon. The U.S. agency that oversees immigration services is changing back its mission statement to refer to the country as a nation of welcome and possibility. It somewhat restores previous language that called the U.S. a nation of immigrants. That was changed in 2018. This is CBS News.
Conversations with some of the world's leading national security officials and experts. Intelligence Matters with Michael Morrell. Weekends on the CBS Radio Network.
Oil investments involve a high degree of risk and actual results may vary.
With the stock market at all-time highs, cash in your profits now and invest in an asset that can potentially pay for up to 20 or more years. That's the sound of a producing oil well and the sound of a smart investment. If you are an SEC-accredited investor, you can take advantage of Encore Energy's projects. Call now to learn how you can potentially achieve 20 or more years of income and deduct 100% of every dollar invested against all forms of income. Call 1-800-278-7455. Invest in your future and buy oil. Oil prices are projected to rise. In fact, Goldman Sachs is projecting oil to go up to $100 a barrel. You need to own a piece of an oil field. Call 1-800-278-7455. Encore Energy is a very active oil and gas operator in its core area of operations. Call now and learn how to deduct 100% of your investment and create 20 or more years of potential monthly income. Call 1-800-278-7455. You'll be calling directly to the home office of Encore Energy. That's 1-800-278-7455. 1-800-278-7455.
Popular magazines are ditching print and going digital soon. Here's CBS's Matt Piper.
Say goodbye to In Style, In Person. The host of magazines, including that one, Entertainment Weekly, and 4 others, will no longer be available in print. The magazines will now be digital only. Larry Diller's media group, Dot-Meredith, will also be slashing 200 jobs, primarily in New York. The April issues of the 6 magazines will be the last. Matt Piper, CBS News.
Bob Saget's family says the actor-comedian died last month in Florida from an accidental hit to the head. According to a medical examiner, Saget hit the back of his head somehow and then went to sleep. He was found unresponsive in his hotel room and declared dead by paramedics. There were no drugs or alcohol involved. Saget was best known for his role as Danny Tanner on Full House and host of America's Funniest Home Videos. He was 65 years old. Monica Ricks, CBS News.
Welcome to Your Turn with Mike Causey, brought to you by WAEPA on Federal News Network. WAEPA is the life insurance choice of over 46,000 federal workers and their families. Learn more at WAEPA.org. Here's your host, Mike Causey.
Hey, welcome to Your Turn. Mike Causey here, and I'm glad to have you with us today. We have it's rather a grim subject. We'll be talking about your estate and life after death and that sort of thing, but it's extremely important, as I've personally experienced recently the death of a son who, the death of anyone is a shock and horror when they're younger than you and as a kid. It's heartbreaking, but life goes on. We must deal with these things. It's made me very conscious of it, and I called my good friend Tom O'Rourke, who's an estate and tax attorney here in the Washington area, based in Rockville. And Tom is an expert in this sort of thing and is going to help guide me through this. And he has written, I hope you've taken a look at today's column. The headline is Don't Turn Your Home into Bleak House. We're getting Dickensian there, Charles Dickens' book. But Tom mentioned it in his explanation in the column today. And if you have a moment, take time to read it because it is really good. It explains the process and it explains probate. I sent it to my grandchildren to look at. But Tom, welcome to the show today. Thank you. And as you know, these are tough times. But you've been doing estates and tax planning many years now. And I guess you've been there, done that, got the T-shirt.
them to describe it. And they
Use
say,
the left
well,
lane ahead.
family fights over everything, the court gets involved, lawyers get involved, and in many cases that's simply not the case. A fairly typical situation I deal with, probably 3 or 4 times a month, is somebody who does have significant assets. They own a house, they have a big balance in a 401k plan, they have a generous annuity, they pass away, and I'll sit down and I'll meet with the family members, and what I'll learn is, well, Dad had one account at Navy Federal or Bank of America in his own name. And even though this individual on paper may have been worth millions of dollars, the only thing subject to probate is that one asset held solely in his name. And all 3 local states, and virtually every state, has something called small estates probate, which is very simple. I typically tell my clients, you can complete small estates probate. I fill out 4 or 5 forms for you to sign. We file them with the Register of Wills. They give you a document called Letters of Administration, which authorizes you to go and close that account. And the whole procedure is usually done within 2 or 3 weeks. And I know in Maryland and Virginia, you qualify for small estates probate if the total value of the assets you hold solely in your name are worth less than $50,000. And in D.C., it's a little lower if the total value of assets is less than $40,000. And it's a very simple process. You file the documents by mail. Most of the Register of Wills offices are pretty efficient, and you have the whole thing done within a matter of 2 or 3 weeks. So that's fairly typical. But that's not what people envision. What people envision is Bleak House.
Charles Dickens, yeah.
Yeah, and I've been referring to Bleak House ever since I've been a lawyer.
My mother and I grew up in boarding houses around town, and we moved almost every year. Didn't have much furniture, but she had about 5 books. One of them was Bleak House.
Yeah.
And that's where she kept her extra money. I think it was 5 $1 bills, but that's my association with Bleak House.
Well, my association, I shouldn't admit this.
Yeah.
My association with Bleak House, I was at Barnes & Noble once Sunday morning looking through everything, and I saw a classic.
Yeah.
And I went and I picked up Bleak House and figured this is something an estates and trust lawyer should certainly read. Well, I picked it up, and first of all, it was a lot longer than I thought it would be. And secondly, I started leafing through it, and it was a lot more complicated than I thought it would be. So
Eric White wants us to take a break, but more about Bleak House when we come back here on Federal News Network, 1500 AM. We'll be right back.
If you have unfiled taxes or are in debt to the IRS, this is important news. The IRS just rolled out a new program to help struggling taxpayers more easily resolve their tax problems. It's called the Taxpayer Relief Initiative, and it opens up powerful new options for people looking to get back on the right track with the IRS. And no one knows this program like the professionals at Optima Tax Relief, America's most trusted tax resolution company. They've resolved over $1 billion in tax debt for their clients and have the expertise and experience to help you. One easy call to Optima can start the process, helping to put an end to your worries of wage garnishment, asset seizure, and other aggressive IRS actions. Make today the beginning of your fresh start with the IRS. Call the experts at Optima Tax Relief now for your free confidential consultation.
Call 800-354-2840. 800-354-2840. 800-354-2840.
Optima Tax Relief.
Some restrictions apply. For complete details, please visit OptimaTaxRelief.com.
1 in 5 of us is bullied. 1 in 3 of us is overweight or obese. 1 in 5 of us will experience mental distress
before we even turn 17.
Adults, we need you. You're the #1 influence in my life. If you're more involved with my health and education, I'm more likely to make healthier choices, have greater self-esteem, and do better in school. Be my action hero.
Learn how you can take action at actionforhealthykids.org.
Hear Frontline Voices on Disaster Response, sponsored by Verizon. How does Fema prepare for disasters?
Understanding threats and hazards that impact the community.
Region 3 Administrator Marianne Tierney says that's job one. Number 2 is consistent, regular integration with their partners.
Positioning people before events to plan, train, and exercise.
Number 3 is being proactive.
And aggressively responding to whatever the event is.
I'm JJ Green.
For those who work on the front lines, chaos can strike in an instant, and lives are at stake. First responders need a network that's built right. That's why we created Verizon Frontline, the advanced network and technology for first responders. Built for superior reliability, built for real interoperability, and built for 5G. Verizon Frontline, built right for first responders. Visit Verizon.com/frontline to learn more. 5G ultra wideband available only in parts of select cities. 5G nationwide available in 2,700 plus cities.
Selling to the government made easier thanks to the Coalition for Government Procurement. Federal News Network. Search Off the Shelf.
Hey, welcome back to Your Turn. Mike Causey here, talking with Tom O'Rourke. He's a tax and state attorney in the Washington area. Tom, would you tell people how they can get in touch with you?
Well, the best way, Mike, is by email. And my email address, kind of long, T, my last name, O'Rourke, O-R-O-U-R-K-E, at Miles, M-I-L-E-S, Stockbridge, STOCKBRIDGE.com.
I think that's even longer than mine.
Yeah, it's T. O'Rourke at MilesStockbridge.com. I practice law with a firm that has a long name, and they have the whole name in the email address.
I've Googled you several times looking for your phone number, and Tom O'Rourke pops right up in Rockville, which is interesting. A lot of business.
Yeah, Google is the greatest research tool man has ever invented.
Yeah, well, speaking of Google, that's what you and I were talking about, the comparisons between probate court and the fact that Dickens' book Bleak House was written about the probate court or the chancery court, and I looked it up, I Googled it, and it said that some experts think that the Bleak House book was based on a case, which I have in the column, and I can't recall now. That's the Lucian versus Woodford, and it lasted for 55 years.
I can't top that.
Yeah.
But I have been involved in cases where probate did continue. I remember one case back in the days when I worked for the Internal Revenue Service, and this was a long time ago. But at the same time, we had 3 separate cases in our office. The one involving a grandfather, his son, and his grandson.
So 3 generations.
All 3 of those people, their estates were still open, and we were involved in it because it was a gentleman who had started a very successful company, and there were issues in valuing the stock. Fortunately, it wasn't family discord. But there were issues which can complicate things. Probably my own personal situation is I had one case that took, I was with my law firm for 15 years. I brought the case with me, and it didn't get resolved until 5 years after I'd been with the firm for 5 years. And it was a dispute among the family. They couldn't agree on anything.
And again, if things had been done in an orderly manner, the feud might have lasted 6 months, might have lasted a year. But this is a gift, and you mentioned this to me at the time we were doing mine years ago. It's a gift to your family.
It certainly is.
Of order.
Yeah, it certainly is. And usually when most people read a will, children may sometimes disagree with it.
Yeah.
But any lawyer is going to tell you, in a will, you get to do what you want.
Right.
It's your property.
Right.
The only right answer is what you want to do. And I tell people that all the time. I'll say, look, they'll say, Tom, what do you think? What should I do? And I say, look, there's only one way to do this, and that's your way.
Yeah.
You do whatever you want.
Yeah, hopefully.
And hopefully your family accepts that.
Yeah.
And in most cases they do.
Well, you said something in the first segment that I'm always underscoring when I hear it from you, is that I may have a house and I may have a 401k and I may have savings, but really I've got fairly limited amount of money to spend.
Oh, that's true.
And that's fine, well and good. But when I die, when virtually anybody dies, and as you point out, in the Washington area, if you're a federal worker or a retiree, if you have a home, you have an estate.
That's
and
right.
it can be the house that you paid $90,000 for back in the day is now worth $800,000.
Yeah.
And we all are worth more dead than alive. And when you think about this, there really is a sizable chunk of money, even if you're living almost day to day.
Right.
There's a sizable chunk of money and property and goods to be dealt with.
You're absolutely right, and all those things which add significantly to your financial well-being are assets you can't spend while you're alive.
Use the left lane ahead.
You get an annuity check, it's worth a lot of money, but Uncle Sam doesn't give it to you in one lump sum. He pays it out to you over the course of your life in a series of monthly payments. That's a very significant asset, but it's not ready cash. You have money in the TSP, well, okay, you got it in there, and that's good, and it allows you to draw on it for the rest of your life, and maybe after you retire or separate from service, sure, you can pull the money out, but if you pull it out in one lump sum, you're going to lose maybe 40% of it to taxes. So, but at your death, everything becomes payable at once. That term life insurance policy you bought 20 years ago and have been making monthly payments on doesn't pay you a dime while you're alive, but when you die, there's a big lump of cash there that's payable to your loved ones or whomever you've designated as beneficiary.
Well, kind of an obvious question, but if somebody said, I remember when we were discussing at my office, discussing long-term care insurance, and there is an optimum date, a certain age where people they say you should consider this rather than disability insurance or something. And I think I got mine early. I'm glad I got it, and I hope I never use it. I hope every penny that I have paid, and will pay in premiums is wasted, because I don't want to need that. But I do have it. It's something like, and this may be a really dumb question, but is there an age when you should have a will or a social situation or a family situation, or maybe the day you get married?
Use the left lane ahead.
I'll tell you when I did it, and not because it was the right thing to do.
Right.
When I had children. I love my wife. I wanted my wife to have everything, but I figured if something happened to me, she's pretty self-sufficient. She's going to get along just fine. But when I had kids, I realized, look, I'm responsible for their care, their well-being. I need to make sure that they'll be taken care of if something happens to me. That's when I did it, and in my experience, I find that's when many people do it. It's important to have a will, because if you don't, then state law dictates. It doesn't suggest, it dictates. It dictates who will inherit your property. And if for no other reason, you should write a will to do two things. Number one, make sure your assets are distributed in the way you want. Your stuff goes to wherever you want to have it. And number two, you will appoint somebody to administer your affairs, to do what you want done when you die. That person would be your personal representative or executor. So at a minimum, you should do that. And then certainly, the thing that I always tell individuals with small children is you need to name a guardian for your child. If you don't name a guardian, the court can appoint somebody who it thinks will do a good job. Well, in my experience, courts always defer to mom or dad because they know who's going to take care of those kids. Otherwise, the court could appoint some local lawyer who's well-meaning, intelligent, will do a good job, but they don't know your kids. Also, it's a real good idea if you have minor children and you want your assets to go to those children. You certainly don't want it to go to them when they turn 18.
Yeah.
Under the laws of most states, a minor may not receive a direct inheritance. Any assets that go to a minor would be managed by a guardian for the child until they reach 18. So it's important for you, number one, to name a guardian. Number two, to set some limits on how assets will be distributed to that child. And when I tell parents of teenage children that whatever you have, when they sell your house and they cash in your life insurance and cash out your 401k plan, you got over $1 million. You want to turn that over to your 18-year-old.
Yeah.
And they're horrified that could happen. But that's exactly what can happen.
I know a situation. This woman, she has a 10-year-old daughter. Boyfriend just died. They were never married. Whatever she gets, the daughter gets from the husband's estate, she will I would think she would automatically be the guardian.
Generally, yes.
Okay.
In virtually, yeah. If it's a parent always is appointed guardian. And the example that I always use is somebody else can object to that, but their chances of winning are not significant. And the case I always refer to is O.J. Simpson's kids. When after O.J. was acquitted in a murder trial but found liable in a civil trial, there was a dispute as to who should raise his kid, and the court said O.J. is the parent. And that's a fairly typical attitude.
So they obviously don't make judgments other than...
No, they don't. They don't. They figure the parental bond is strong.
I thought of something when we were talking about that. I was talking to someone the other day, in fact, about this show coming up, and I said you were a estate planner, and he actually knew your name, but he was sitting there thinking, and he realized he and his longtime girlfriend broke up, I don't know, a year, 2 or 3 ago, and he was thinking about my situation, my plight, and this radio show, and he said he realized that his former girlfriend was the beneficiary of all his insurance, and his 2 daughters were not, and he going to move to change that quickly. But I mean, I get the oops, I forgot thing. You may be married a second or third time, and if you're a federal worker, if your annuity goes, it may go to the person you didn't intend it.
Oh, there was a Supreme Court that involved that issue, and it involved a local federal employee. It was a gentleman who got a job with the federal government. He was married. He instinctively named his wife. Well, time passed. He got divorced. He got remarried. He wrote a will. In the will, he said, I want everything to go to wife number 2. But he never bothered to change his beneficiary designation. Never thought of it. Money was coming out of his paycheck every 2 weeks. He forgot he even had it. And then when he died and wife number 2 applied for the benefits, OPM said, we're sorry, but you're not the beneficiary. The case went all the way to the Supreme Court. And they argued that under Virginia law, and this is true in most states, when you get divorced, that terminates any rights your former spouse has. But vaguely is governed by federal statute. And under that federal statute, your insurance goes to whomever you designate as beneficiary. So wife number 1 ended up getting all the money, and wife number 2 was out of luck.
Good. Take a short break here on federalnewsnetwork.com. 1500 AM. We'll be right back.
Use the left lane ahead.
Each week on the Business of Government Hour, government executives and thought leaders join host Michael Keegan for an informative, insightful, and in-depth conversation on improving government and its effectiveness. These individuals are truly changing the way government does business. So join them each week on the Business of Government Hour. Find out how the business of government isn't business as usual. The Business of Government Hour, every Monday at 11 a.m. on Federal News Network.
Data. You've got to mine for it, make sense of it, and where the White House is concerned, protect it like our nation depends on it. Turn precious data into powerful insights with Z by HP. Our data science workstations give your team the confidence of hardware-enforced security and the power to pull rapid results from your most demanding data sets. Go to hp.com/data science and see how Z by HP, powered by Intel Xeon processors, can help you do more with data securely.
A federal career can last 30 years or more, and so can your federal retirement. Tune in for Your Benefit every Monday morning to get the information you need to plan your retirement, maximize your federal benefits, and increase your financial savvy. For Your Benefit, presented by NITP and sponsored by WEPA, offers valuable information on topics of interest to the federal employee. Join us each Monday at 10:05 a.m. on Federal News Network. For additional information, visit nitpinc.com.
I drive my bus in a busy city. That's why road safety is so important to me. I know that I must slow down and be extra careful when I make a wide turn. Buses need more room than cars. Everyone can help keep our roads safe. Next time you're driving, remember to give buses plenty of time and space to finish turning before driving ahead. Let's all plan to share the road safely. Learn how at www.sharetheroadsafely.gov.
The important work at your agency never stops. And at Leidos, we stop at nothing to help you complete your mission. Our 43,000 employees use technology, engineering.
who either are active federal employees or retired federal employees.
Well, and it's interesting, too, because if you are a federal worker, a number of good things go with that, benefits and that sort of thing. And the thing you mentioned about FEGLI, I know you said that before and I had forgotten it, but it's its own, it's a standalone, it's a federal thing.
Absolutely.
And it's different. And,
I mean, the important thing is, for many assets, and insurance is the most common example, it always passes. The insurance company is legally obligated to pay those benefits to whomever you've designated as beneficiary. You made a contract with whoever your insurance company is. You're going to pay them premiums, and then when you die, they're going to pay insurance to whomever you've named, and they're legally obligated to do that. And just before we took a break, I told you about the case where the Supreme Court case where the gentleman neglected to change his beneficiary after he got divorced. So all of his insurance ended up going to wife number one. Now, I had another case involving a gentleman. He got married very young. He was a professor at a local college, and he was enrolled in a pension plan, and he paid into the pension plan, and he named his wife as beneficiary.
200 meters, turn right.
And they went their separate ways. They got divorced. He left his job at the university. He forgot about the pension funds, just left them stay there and continue to grow. And then years later, he married and he had a minor child. And in doing some digging, we found out about this old neglected pension fund that had grown into a fairly substantial amount of money, close to $100,000. And when we contacted the pension fund manager, they said, well, we're sorry, but he named Mrs. X as beneficiary, which was wife number one. So they said that's who we're going to pay it to unless she's willing to waive her right. So I called her and I explained the situation, and I explained that her husband had a child, and she said, well, of course I'll disclaim. It's not right for me to have that money. That little girl needs it more than I do. Now, I got to admit, I was kind of shocked. That's not typical, and I wouldn't count on it. Right. But there are a lot of really good people in the world. Yeah. And this lady figured, okay, if I get another $100,000, it's not going to dramatically change my life. Maybe go on a once-in-a-lifetime vacation, but this little girl needs it for college a lot more than
for whatever reason she
so
really
I mean, there are people like that, but the important point is don't leave your situation to chance. Make sure. One of the things I know I've talked about on this show in the past first of all, you have to have an estate plan. You got to do something. But once you have it in place, you need to update it periodically because things tend to change, and you need to make revisions. And one of the things that I encourage federal employees to do is review your benefit package on a regular basis. You know, right now, many folks are working on preparing tax returns. You're thinking about financial issues. Now may be the time to double check your beneficiary designations on your life insurance, your beneficiary designations for your annuity and for your TSP, and just think for a second, is this still the way I want things to work out? And in most cases it will be, because the people you love and care about pretty much remain the same for most of your life. It's your spouse, your children, and close friends and family.
That's interesting too, when they talk about the wisdom of the crowd. And I used to do retirement seminars for a friend. He didn't pay me or anything, but I would go in and speak for half an hour. The experts had their subject. I was just talking about the news media and federal employees, but it was good advertising for the station. It was good for me, and it was good for it was a win-win situation. But the thing that amazed me about it, I would hang around for some of the sessions, is there might be 25 people there, sometimes husbands, wives, sometimes just the individual employees. But somebody would ask a question, and you could literally almost see a light bulb go off over four heads. Something they had never occurred to them. It was a benefit they didn't know existed.
Oh yeah.
And it was worth attending the seminar just for that learning that one factoid.
Well, I still remember a seminar I taught about 10 years ago, and it was outside of the D.C. area. It was a place that here you tend to be exposed to those issues. Articles appear in the Post. People are well aware of what federal news radio is, and they read your column daily and listen to shows. But sometimes when you get away from here, people don't think about that. And I always, every time I speak at a seminar, I always tell people the one thing I encourage everybody to do is put as much money into the TSP as you can afford and as the law allows. And I go through and explain how it helps save taxes and how you grow your money over years, and how it's really been an ideal plan. And I had some gentleman who had been with the federal government for over 30 years, and he came up to me and he said, "Tom, you know that thrift you were talking about? Can I get into that? I'm under the old retirement
I like
system."
a piece of that, huh?
Yeah, and I was
and he missed years.
He had no idea. He had no idea it was even available.
Well, a really ancient war story. When I was a very young reporter at the Washington Post, the White House reporter was a guy named Eddie Follier. True Southern gentleman, beautifully dressed, just dignified in every way and honorable and all that sort of thing. And one time he came down and sat with, there were three of us young reporters, and he sat down with us, to be nice, I guess. And somebody said something about, and he'd been at the Post for 40 or 50 years, and somebody said something about sick leave, and he said, he didn't know. He'd been there 40 years, and I didn't know we had sick leave. So it does happen, which leads me to a question. It may not be an answer to this. Have you ever seen any numbers as to what percentage of people die without a will?
Oh, yes. Yes, the American Bar Association and all kinds of financial publications run articles on a fairly regular basis, but 2/3 of all people don't have a will.
That's astounding.
And probably a little lower in this area.
Yeah.
People in the D.C. area many times are well educated and somewhat successful financially, and they tend to think about that. But 2/3 of all people don't have a will, and now for many of those 2/3, it's not a big deal. And it's not a big deal because you own assets jointly, and when you die, they go to your joint owner. You've designated beneficiaries for things like TSP, 401k, annuity, and they go automatically. But sometimes it doesn't work out that way. But 2/3 of all people don't have a will, and many people tell me, "Well, I don't want to think about that."
Well, I was going to ask you the human factor. You don't want to think about it. You don't want to consider it. I'll put this off.
It's not something I need to worry about. I'm young, I'm healthy, and the Lord may have different plans for you.
Well, okay, so now we get back to probate, which you were talking about before, and the bleak house concept. But I gather it's not as bad as many of us think, but maybe it's something you still want to avoid.
It is something many people want to avoid. And what it is, it's the court-supervised process for winding up the affairs of a deceased individual. It has two major purposes. Number one, to make sure that your assets are used to pay your credit. If you owe somebody money, you don't get out of that debt just by dying. If you've got assets, you got to pay your bills. That's part one. Part two, after you pay those bills, to make sure whatever's left gets distributed to the people you want to have it, the people you've named as beneficiaries in your will. And if you don't have a will, to make sure the people who are your beneficiaries under state law. Every state has a law that says if you don't have a will, these are your beneficiaries. It's usually your immediate family, but not all. So that's the whole purpose of it. If an individual dies and they own an asset solely in your name, let's say you have a bank account with XYZ Bank, you got a savings account, you got $10,000 in that account, and you own it in your name, and you haven't designated a beneficiary. You use it as a place to, you put money in and you take it out every month to pay all your bills. When you die, that account is frozen. The bank only has a right to deal with Mike Causey. It doesn't have a right to deal with you. Can't go and say, well, I'm his child, I'm his beneficiary. The bank says, no, we don't have the authority to do that. You have to open a probate estate. You've got to file a petition for probate with a local register of wills. It's a simple, straightforward process. And when you do that, the register of wills will name you the executor or personal representative. Personal representative is the gender-neutral term that can be either your executor or executive. The court then issues you a one-page document called Letters of Administration. And if I get that one-page document naming me the personal representative of Mike Causey's estate, I have the legal authority to access everything Mike Causey owned at the time of his death. I can go and close out the bank. And as I mentioned earlier in the show, quite frequently, even people with very substantial assets don't have all that many assets solely in their name. So many people tend to have a bank account in their name, maybe a place close to their office, or they may own a car in their name. I know when I bought cars, it'd either be in my name or my wife's name. And for me, because my wife was home with the kids when I was buying a car, and it was easier just to have it in my name. Many people do. And it's necessary in the event of death to get it out of the name of the dead person.
Interesting. Okay, we'll take a short break here. We'll be right back on federalnewsnetwork.com, 1500 AM.
What makes essential workers essential?
We build safe roads for you to drive on.
We harvest fresh produce for your families to eat.
We help you heal when you're sick.
We get you where you need to go.
We keep where you work and live clean and safe.
We make sure you get what you need to make your household work.
You're the essential workers who help our nation run. You're in every city, town, and corner of our country, and you come from all over the globe. And you have essential protections under the law. I'm Marty Walsh. The Wage and Hour Division at the Department of Labor helps ensure you receive the essential protections you deserve. If you have questions about your pay or about your job protection during an illness, visit our website or call 866-4US-WAGE. That's 866-487-9243. We can provide help in more than 200 languages.
Brought to you by the United States Department of Labor.
Peraton, supporting national security of this planet and beyond by doing the can't be done. Visit Peraton.com for more info. That's Peraton.com. Here's Robert Costello from the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency on the Federal Executive Forum on Cybersecurity Strategies for Defense and Homeland, sponsored by Verizon.
I think what I see in 2 or 3 years is an organization that people want to come to work at because it's much more like the private sector. You're getting good IT, we're moving fast, we're having an extremely diverse workforce, and we're really on the cutting edge.
To listen to the whole program from Treza Media Group, log on to federalnewsnetwork.com, search Federal Executive Forum.
Advancements in technologies present federal agencies with both opportunities and challenges. At Verizon, we embrace those challenges. Verizon invests billions in our global networks every year to deliver secure data reliably. Our advanced communication solutions and modern call centers connect your workforce and citizens in the office, in the field, and internationally. We're committed to modernization that delivers better mission results faster. Verizon, we don't wait for the future. We build it. VerizonEnterprise.com/Federal IT.
COVID-19 is impacting the world and changing the face of healthcare. Conversations on Healthcare with Mark Maselli and Margaret Flinter welcomes the greatest minds in health policy, technology, and innovation from Dr. Anthony Fauci.
There are going to be more than one vaccine that's going to be approved by the FDA.
Surgeon General Vivek Murthy.
If we really want to get treatment right, we've got to integrate it with primary care.
We're bringing these experts straight to you Saturday and Sunday mornings at 8:30 on the Federal News Network. Conversations on Healthcare is a production of Community Health Center, Inc.
Tom Temin here, coming up on Thursday's Federal Drive. The Defense Department's cybersecurity crowd teams up with colleges, lots of them, to bring the latest cyber thinking into the department. Plus, how the Library of Congress is using digital means to bring its holdings more in reach to Black, Indigenous, and other minority groups. It's called Connecting Communities. Join me Thursday morning, starting at 6 for the Federal Drive with Tom Temin here on Federal News Network.
News critical to your federal career. Subscribe to the Morning Federal Report.
It's possible.
Federal News
Please
Network.
turn around.
Hey, welcome back to Your Turn. Mike Causey here. I'm talking with Tom O'Rourke. He's an attorney based in Rockville, Maryland, and he's a former Internal Revenue Service lawyer, and he is a state and tax expert now, and does wills and all that kind of thing. And sort of the subject today was probate, and there's a very good explanation of it today, and I can brag on it because while it's in my column today, I didn't write it. Tom did. But it's very good, very useful. And Tom, before the break, you were talking about the thing that's actually my family's involved in now because we had a death in the family, and with a car, and it had never occurred to me to put my car in the name of maybe one of my kids, but probably not a bad idea.
Well, it's not a bad idea if that's who you want to have the car.
Right, yeah.
Because when you die, all the child has to do is take your death certificate to the Department of Motor Vehicles or mail it in or do it by email. And it'll pass directly to them. If not, and quite often, probably the single most common asset I have to open a probate estate for is a car.
Interesting. Yeah.
It's in the name of the person who drives the car, and once you go say, okay, Dad passed away, let's sell his car. So you go to CarMax or wherever you want to sell it to, and they say, well, no, you have to open a probate estate. So you'll open a probate estate, you'll be appointed personal representative, and then you'll find the car in your capacity as personal representative. So, again, having a car in one person's name only is very, very common.
Right, and I think
even for somebody who has a very sophisticated, very comprehensive estate plan.
But is it worth having it in two names?
I'm never a big fan of titling things in two names unless it's your spouse or unless it's one of your children who you want to be able to access your bank account. You get sick and you can't access it, and they need to pay your bills. Small estate probate is not a big deal. You really, if the car is the only thing, that usually can be handled, as I said earlier, in a matter of weeks. Now, don't want to mislead folks and tell them probate is going to be handled for everybody in a matter of weeks. If the size of your estate is more than $50,000, and for many people it is, let's say you die and your house passes to your wife, then when your wife dies, it's only in her name. So you're going to have to open a probate estate there, and for the house alone, you're going to have to open a regular estate because the house is worth more than $50,000. That's where it becomes a little more cumbersome. It's not horrible, but there are more steps you need to take. You're not required to hire a lawyer, but many people find it necessary to do so because they get bogged down in filing what's required to file with the Register of Wills and say, I don't want to mess with this anymore. I want to turn it over to a lawyer. And, of course, the lawyer wants to be paid for his or her service. Cost money, and particularly if you hire a lawyer. And one thing we haven't mentioned at all yet, it's a public record. If you know that John Doe has died in the District of Columbia, you can go to the Register of Wills and say, I'd like to look at the probate file for John Doe. And you can do that. It's a public record, and you'll see their will. You'll see the listing of all the assets they own. You'll see a listing of all the credit they had. It's an open book. The snapshot of their financial situation at the time of their death. As a result, many people who are public figures want to try to avoid probate.
You know, we've got 2 minutes left. We'd make this further about Charles Dickens and another one, Great Expectations, another book of his. And I'm thinking if this process is drawn out over a year, 2 years or something like that, what looked to be a good, fair settlement at the time of death or shortly thereafter, in 2 years the anticipation grows and there are greater expectations, and it might, I mean, it seems to me a value to getting it done sooner rather than later.
Oh, absolutely. I just read a newsletter. The lady wrote an article and it was entitled, Okay, Dad's Dead, Now Where's My Money? That's the way a lot of people perceive it. And I still remember the time I went to the Register of Wills in Montgomery County, and I was dealing with one of the very helpful deputies. She told me the story about the guy that came in. He said, I want my GD money, and I want it now, and I'm not leaving.
He's still there.
He's still there, probably.
Yeah, well, and I know, too, what editorial writer at the Post, one time she said after a death, somebody's got to say what's for lunch. You know, you've got to get back to reality. So, Tom, I really appreciate you being here today, and I hope people will read today's article. It's called Don't Turn Your Home into Bleak House, because Tom has an excellent explanation of probate, the good side and the bad side. So thanks very much for being here, Tom. Thank you, Eric White, for running the board today, and we'll see you all here next Wednesday at 10 a.m. Stay safe.
Listening to Your Turn with Mike Causey, brought to you by WEPA on Federal News Network. WEPA is the life insurance choice of over 46,000 federal workers and their
doing 3 jobs. I wasn't happy where I was at.
So she joined the Marines.
It was pretty surreal. It was something that I didn't really think that I could achieve or that was possible for me.
She spent 9 years in the Marines, along the way attending AMU. She says the school's flexible online courses were a perfect fit given her hectic schedule.
That was key to me, being able to piece together my schedule and actually finish my degree plan.
Wells received a bachelor's degree in psychology from AMU, aiming to be a professional mental health counselor. I'm Nick Einelli.
American Military University proudly serves our nation's military veteran community, offering a quality, affordable online education with over 200 programs respected by area employers. Classes start monthly. Start today at amuonline.com.
SAIC and Microsoft understand the challenges of cloud adoption. Whether it's making the right business case to acquire and contract for cloud services, understanding organizational change and retraining, to using governance best practices in a shared responsibility model. SAIC and Microsoft can help you migrate to the cloud confidently and securely using SAIC Cloud SIM. Mission-focused modernization at the edge with SAIC and Microsoft. Learn more at SAIC.com/cloud.
Staying educated on emerging technology trends can be overwhelming, and we're here to help. Gov White Papers gives the public sector and supporting industries one place to find and share government-related content, saving you time in serving our country. Topics include cybersecurity, COVID-19, education, defense, and much more. Gain peace of mind understanding new trends and technologies to modernize and protect your agency while streamlining technology adoption. Claim your free membership on govwhitepapers.com. That's govwhitepapers.com.
Profile America, Wednesday, February 9th. On this date in 1825, our most unusual presidential election was held, with the winner receiving just 13 votes to the runner-ups 7, and 4 to the third-place finisher. The election held in November 1824 saw only 353,000 votes cast out of a population of about 10 million residents. Andrew Jackson won a plurality of 43% in the four-way race, but Jackson received only 99 of the 131 electoral votes needed to win, so the matter went to the House of Representatives as called for in the Constitution. Voting was done by the 24 state delegations, and John Quincy Adams won the 13 state votes he needed. In contrast, nearly 155 million Americans cast their ballots in the 2020 presidential election, which had its own unusual circumstances. Profile America is in its 25th year as a public service of the U.S. Census Bureau.
As you navigate the uncertainties of our new reality, Federal News Network is here to guide you through it. Download our revamped mobile app for all the latest news and information on your agency's evolving telework, pay and leave policies, acquisition guidance, and what this all means for your TSP. We're here to serve you, the dedicated federal employees and contractors who continue to serve your mission. The Federal News Network app, available on the App Store and on Google Play.
WFED Washington, WTOP-FM HD2 Washington, W283DG Sterling, WTLP-FM HD2 Braddock Heights Frederick. Federal News Network is the news organization of record for the federal community. We are nonpartisan, non-political, and our job is to help federal government and contracting executives make informed decisions. We inform federal managers, contractors, and policymakers on issues related to the federal workforce, management and acquisition, pay benefits and retirement, the Defense Department, and federal IT. Portions pre-recorded. Nights and weekends, we air Washington Nationals, Capitals, and Wizards, and the Navy Midshipmen. We are the Washington, D.C. home of Navy Athletics. Download the Federal News Network app on the App Store or Google Play Store. Play Federal News Network on Alexa. Check us out on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Federal News Network. Our mission is helping you meet your mission.
This is CBS News on the Hour, your home for original reporting.
I'm Monica Ricks in New York. Score one more for the home team. Nathan Chen wins a gold medal for Team USA in men's figure skating at the Winter Olympics in Beijing. CBS's Steve Futterman is there.
4 years ago in Pyeongchang, Nathan Chen had difficulty during the short program and was never really in contention for the gold medal. Here in Beijing, everything worked perfectly. He had the best score ever in the short program, and when the free skate took place, Nathan Chen looked so comfortable on the ice. He completed his jumps nearly flawlessly, and he easily wins the gold medal, beating his closest competitor by more than 22 points. Steve Futterman, CBS
as long as it takes.
CBS's Chris Van Cleve is at the border now in Michigan.
The so-called Freedom Caravan protest is causing huge traffic jams at this border crossing in Port Huron, 2 hours from Detroit. Big rig traffic is being redirected here, but the bridge can't handle as much traffic as the Ambassador Bridge, causing long waits to enter Canada.
Homeland Security is warning these trucker protests could expand into the U.S. soon, possibly on Super Bowl weekend. Masks are also a big debate nationwide now as 9 states lift mandates in schools and public spaces. WBZ TV reporter Tiffany Chan is in Boston.
Governor Baker points to the state's high vaccination rate and rapid testing programs in schools.
It's time to give our kids a sense of normalcy.
Many educators fear that unmasking now will signal to students that the pandemic is over when there's still a risk of infection.
And I just think it's the time to really just be safe and protect our kids. Not all kids are vaccinated.
While others say masking in the classroom comes with a cost to kids' mental health.
The National Archives wants the Department of Justice to investigate the Trump administration over how it's handled presidential records. Officials had to pick up 15 boxes of documents from Mar-a-Lago this week. All presidential records are supposed to be turned over to the archives when a president leaves office. The Chicago Auto Show is back.
Organizers of the Chicago Auto Show got a good response to a scaled-back show last summer. The show opens to the public Saturday with masks and other COVID protocols for in place.
WWJ Radio's Jeff Gilbert. Workers at Dolly Parton's Dollywood theme park in Knoxville can go to college for free. The company that runs the park, Hershen Enterprises, is footing the bill on tuition, fees, and books. 11,000 employees at 24 other parks will get the same perk. That program starts in 2 weeks. This is CBS News.
There's always something new under the sun. CBS Mornings, weekdays on CBS.
Now an important message from Exergen. A critical new FDA study proves that the widely used non-contact thermometers are not accurate and have high probabilities for false negative readings. New COVID strands are on the rise, and non-contact manufacturers are being irresponsible at a time when accuracy matters most. Accurate temperature measurements are essential. Don't wait. Switch to Exergen because they are accurate and backed by over 100 clinical studies. Be sure, be accurate with Exergen. Learn more at Exergen.com.
Time is running out on your chance to enter the Rocket Mortgage Super Bowl Squares sweepstakes. Every time the score changes, somebody's going to win $50,000. That means every touchdown, field goal, 50 G's. Plus, 2 grand prize winners will win $500,000 they could use toward their dream home. Get in the game today. See rules.
No purchase necessary. Legal residence in 50 U.S. and D.C. of age majority has 11.11.2. Equals another licensed all 50 states. NMLS number 3030. The NFL entities will not offer sponsors promotion in any way.
European scientists say they've made a major breakthrough in the quest to develop nuclear fusion energy.
Nuclear fusion achieved at a European lab in Britain for a mere 5 seconds, but that's twice as long as the record set there 25 years ago. Where will we be in another 25 years? Scientist Volker Nauland.
We are following the European roadmap for fusion, and this foresees that we have fusion power in the grid by 2050. And I think today's result shows that the plan is working.
So, we're one day closer to a world with limitless clean energy. Vicky Barker, CBS News, London.
Space hummus is officially getting liftoff. Some Israeli scientists plan to grow chickpeas at the International Space Station. So astronauts will bring seeds and a mini greenhouse into orbit next week. They're trying to find a sustainable food source that can grow in zero-G. If it works, they'll try growing plants on the moon and eventually on Mars. Monica Ricks, CBS News.
Welcome to On DoD on Federal News Network. Now your host, Jared Serbu.
Thanks for being with us this week. And we're going to dedicate the bulk of our program this time to a recent conversation I had with Danielle Metz, DoD's top official for enterprise IT, on exactly where the department's going with cloud computing. To be more precise, enterprise-scale cloud computing. As most of our audience knows by this point, the Pentagon canceled its controversial single-vendor Jedi cloud contract last year. Its replacement is JWCC, a multiple-vendor approach that's going to involve Amazon, Microsoft, Oracle, and Google. But the way DoD is going to allocate that work and have those companies compete for task orders is pretty novel. If you want to
be cynical about it, you could say it looks like it's engineered to make the whole thing immune to bid protests. But whether or not that's the intention, it does look like the end result is going to be to get task orders issued quickly, which is obviously really, really important in its own right for what the Pentagon's trying to do with Enterprise Cloud. If any of this sounds familiar, I wrote about my conversation with Ms. Metz just before the holidays for federalnewsnetwork.com in a fair amount of detail. But I still think this interview is still the most comprehensive public explanation DoD has given up until this point about what it's actually up to with JWCC. So I wanted to present the whole thing for our listeners here as well. So, without further ado, my conversation with Danielle Metz, Deputy DoD Chief Information Officer for Information Enterprise. Ms. Metz, thank you very much for doing this, and I want to spend most of our time today talking about how the JWCC contract is actually going to work once awards are actually made. But let's start with some big picture stuff, because the department has published had published quite a bit of documentation on JEDI. Relatively little so far on JWCC. I think there's really only 5 pages out there at this point. So start us off, if you would, by talking a bit about how the department's views of Enterprise Cloud, its requirements for Enterprise Cloud, its understanding of the market has changed over these last 3 years.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think with JEDI, what you saw was the department's need to have an enterprise, a cloud infrastructure contract in place. And we wanted to be able to partner with one vendor and have one cloud so that we could become more cloud conversant, not only on the acquisition, contracting, identification of dollars for services, but also the technical and operational processes as well. And that was really the overarching strategy, the strategic thinking, and going about JEDI with one cloud, one vendor approach. And I think the other thing too was back in 2017 when we envisioned JEDI, cloud service providers weren't as technically savvy as they are today in terms of data portability, and so the ability to move from different types of clouds. So it really constrains the department's ability to entertain multiple clouds with the services that we were wanting to achieve, from unclassified all the way to top secret, and extending that out to the tactical edge. And so there was a lot of advocacy that we needed to do at JEDI, so I think that was really what you were seeing in the literature and documentation that was being published as we were describing the need for JEDI. I think that's very well established now. I think how JEDI came to an end is also very well established in terms of the litigation. And also, what's also very well established is that the department still has an urgent unmet need for cloud services infrastructure, from unclassified to top secret, processing solutions that can move data through those echelons, and then to the tactical edge. That is still on record. We still don't have it. And with Secretary Austin, Secretary Hicks stating Joint Ultimatum C2 and AI and data acceleration, those key components require the need for the department to have cloud infrastructure and services. So with JWCC, or the Joint Warfighting Cloud Capability, this is really tackling that urgent unmet need in a very quick manner. And the way that we chose to go about that is an acquisition strategy that would do direct solicitations, and limiting those direct solicitations to the 5 US-based hyperscale cloud service providers. So we weren't going to do a full and open competition, which is what we did with JEDI. But the department is committed to doing full and open competition. And as part of our overarching cloud strategy approach, once we have the JWCC contract award, a year from that, we would embark on our open market research, and it would not exclude the CSPs. It would be for any company that can meet the department's requirements. And so that, in effect, it would create the department's cloud marketplace commensurate to what the IC has with their CPB.
So JWCC is in some ways a bridge to whatever you're going to do a year later.
That's correct. And so JWCC is really, the way that we have the contract established, we'll have established, is a 3-year base with 2 1-year option years. And the reason why we wanted to be able to have 3 years is because we knew it was going to take a while for us to be able to onboard the combatant commands, the military services, and defense agencies build activities to start using the JWCC, going through the automating provisioning tool, which we call AT, to be able to initiate task orders. And the idea of JWCC is once we have contract awards, there are individual awards to those CSPs that receive those awards. And so those task orders are competed each and every time. And the mission owner's requirements drive how the task orders can be initiated, and then the competition takes place at the task order level.
All right, let's dig into that a little bit because I'm a bit confused on how that's going to work. My understanding from the pre-solicitation notice back in the summer was that the intent was to award separate IDIQs to each vendor, which is not the traditional way you would do it if you were going to do competition at the task order level. So you're saying each time the department or a military service has a requirement for cloud services, it will be competed across all of those 4 IDIQs?
So it is, the JWCC is, you have it right, an IDIQ, and then we will have individual contracts with the CSPs, and the competition takes place at the task order level. And this is exactly what the CTB is achieving with how they're going to do their execution of task orders as well. The difference for the department and what we're working right now on is typically something like that takes 30 to 45 days. That is unsatisfactory, and we are working very creatively within the bounds of FAR and DFAR to be able to make that into 5 to 10 days. And so that's the actual work that's taking place now. The JWCC Program Management Office, which is DISA's hosting a Compute Center, also known as HAC, partnered with WHSAB and the acquisition lawyers, are working through how we're going to be able to execute those task orders through the automated provisioning tool at and to be able to execute those task orders within days instead of the typical 30 to 45 days.
That's very interesting. I just want to go back one beat and make sure that you didn't misspeak when you said one contract. There are actually 4 different IDIQ contracts.
That's correct.
Okay.
That is correct.
I know a lot of this is probably still TBD, but can you say anything more about how that rapid competition process would actually work? I mean, is a company required to submit a proposal every time there's a new requirement?
Yeah, so to take a step back, as you know, we did direct solicitations to the 4 CSP back in November 19. And so right now, they're the ones that are providing their proposals to the request for proposal and PWS that we submitted as part of our acquisition package that went to them. They will be sending their proposals to the government in the next month or so. And based on the government's assessment of those proposals and engagements with the vendors, the government will make the determination as to which would receive the direct contract award. So these are individual sole source. It's not one, it's right now many. Most 4 could be less than. And so once those contracts are awarded, that's the IDIQ. And then based on that is the catalog that will be created, and then the purchasing or the task order execution through the automating provisioning tool.
Okay, so the sense in which it's a competition is, tell me if I'm making too much of a logical leap here, all of the company's prices and capabilities are sort of pre-populated into this DISA system. And then it's almost an automated competition where the government determines which company or combination of companies' capabilities are going to suit the requirement. Is that something about right as far as how this is going to look?
Yeah, that's correct. And I think the only nuance that I'll stress is the mission owner's requirements that would determine how that task order is going to be competed, and then how it's going to be satisfied by the companies that are on that on the contract.
Got it. So just to be super clear, at that task order level, when those competitions happen, there's no more interaction with the vendor where they get to come in and make an argument about why we think our service offering is going to do the job better here, just because that would take a long time.
That's correct. So that's the vision of how we want to be able to execute.
Are you aware of any other government procurement that's actually worked that way with those kinds of task order competitions? Or is this are you innovating here?
It's very revolutionary, and I think that this shows the commitment to the department in terms of wanting to transform our business processes so that we can get the effect of capabilities quicker to our work better.
Let's talk about how you're going to ensure fair and reasonable prices over the life of the contract. Let's say you exercise all your options and the thing goes out for 3 years. Are the prices that are set in these direct awards relatively static? How do you make sure that the prices DoD pays are, commensurate
to inspire that competition. In terms of the specifics for the pricing, those are going to be negotiated within the terms of the FAR. And anything further than that is going to be really difficult for me to get into with the specifics, just because of where we are in the process.
Yeah, that makes sense. I want to get a little bit more clarity on what happens after this during these option periods. So it's 1 year after the contract awards. You may do a competition, or you definitely will do a competition at that point.
We will, so 1 year from the JWCC contract being awarded, we would initiate our market research for a fair and open competition to establish a DoD marketplace. And unlike what we did in JWCC, we would not exclude it to just be the US-based CSPs.
The 4 vendors who will have played up to that point are going to have a pretty serious incumbent advantage at that point, will they not? I mean, how are you thinking ahead at this point about how you make sure that really is a fair and open competition? And realistically, what other companies and kinds of capabilities beyond the hyperscale CSPs would become part of JWCC? Are they other ancillary services or integration services? What's the long-term vision there?
Yeah, so I think you know that the department has at least 13 what I'll call enterprise cloud contracts, and they're all through integrators. And so those, we have them today. So the Air Force has Cloud One, the Navy has their own contract, Army just stood up theirs. So those will continue to go forward, and that body of work, the lessons learned from that, the cloud convergency and cloud fluency that's coming from those current contracts will continue and then be folded into JWCC if the services deem that the JWCC meets their requirements. We're not mandating JWCC. This is really for the combat commands and the DAPAs first, and then for those military services who have current cloud contracts that may not have an IL6 or secret, a top secret, or a tactical edge, they can use JWCC because we will have the services. So I think that also it would be kind of short-sighted for me to say that there's not going to be another company out there that can meet the requirements of the department, because right now so much can change within a year or 2 years from when we start the open the market research, and that's what we want to be able to do. We want to be able to preserve that trade space for that innovation and not try to preclude anything. And I think what we wanted for JWCC was twofold, and you were correct in saying it is serving as a bridge. We know we have an urgent unmet need. We know we need to have capabilities out to the forces. We know we don't have that, and we know that we are well behind the power curve. So how do we go about making sure that we have capability at the speed and alacrity that we need? That was the vision of JWCC and the strategy that we have, recognizing extreme long-term the importance of, once we have that cloud fluency, from acquisition, funding, the technical expertise as well, how we're going to operate this, how are we going to be able to really leverage and harness the cloud compute, the data, be able to do the machine learning, the artificial intelligence, all the things that we talk about but have that practical application. We'll be so much further along that we will be able to have a true cloud marketplace that will be able to tailor and meet all of the different mission needs for the department.
Danielle Metz, the Defense Department's Deputy CIO for Information Enterprise, talking with me about how DoD's multi-billion-dollar JWCC contract is actually going to work. Much more of our conversation after a quick break. This is On DoD on Federal News Radio, part of the Federal News Network. I'm Jared Swin.
Avanti makes the everywhere workplace possible. IT modernization in the federal government requires harnessing automation, innovation, security, and emerging technologies. Avanti is a U.S.-based software company providing a zero-trust security approach to unified endpoint management, mobile device management, risk-based vulnerability and patch management, along with enterprise service management solutions for both veteran and on-premise deployments. For more information, visit Avanti.com. That's IVANTI.com, and follow us at GoAvanti.
The need has never been greater for healthcare professionals. Nursing is one of the most in-demand degrees you can have. If you are a registered nurse, you can get a fast track to a BSN and advance your nursing career to the next level. The Stratford University RN to BSN pathway can be completed fully online or in a classroom setting at the Alexandria or Woodbridge campus. Find out more at stratford.edu. That's stratford.edu. Stratford University, changing lives one student at a time.
Eric was way behind on his taxes.
I owed a lot of money to the IRS, almost $15,000. I tried to make payments.
The IRS wasn't satisfied with Eric's efforts, so they came after him full force.
They're coming to put a lien and a hold on all my income, my home, my car. I was just overwhelmed at what to do.
Then Eric called Optima Tax Relief.
When Optima Tax got involved, the calls would stop, the threats would stop. It was easy like 1, 2, 3.
Optima Tax Relief is A+ rated by the Better Business Bureau, and their team of expert tax professionals took care of Eric's problem.
I owe $15,000, and now my debt is clean. I don't owe anything.
Take Eric's advice.
If you have a tax problem, you need to call Optima Tax now.
Call Optima Tax Relief for a free consultation. Call 800-354-2840. 800-354-2840. 800-354-2840.
Optima Tax Relief.
Some restrictions apply. For complete details, please visit OptimaTaxRelief.com.
C3AI is solving the previously unsolvable, addressing complex, mission-critical defense and intelligence challenges. Learn more at C3.ai.
What's best for you and your federal career? And what comes next? Your Turn with Mike Causey. Search Your Turn. News impacting feds and contractors, plus Mike Causey's unique perspective on pay, benefits, and retirement. Subscribe to the Morning Federal Report at Federal News Network. Latest updates for the armed services and defense contractors. Get our DoD Reporter's Notebook. Subscribe at Federal News Network.
Back on Federal News Radio, part of the Federal News Network. This is On DoD. I'm Jared Serbu. As we return to our conversation with Danielle Metz, Deputy DoD CIO for Information Enterprise, talking about how DoD's $9 billion enterprise cloud computing contract in practice. As she told us before the break, one of the major differences from the JEDI contract is that DoD really is not trying to displace the cloud contracts the military services have come up with on their own, at least not for now. The main focus, for starters, is what's often called the fourth estate. The idea of starting to deliver services to combatant commands and defense agencies and field activities first. I don't think I had heard that before, and that also seems like that's a change from the JEDI approach that y'all originally had a few years ago. Can you talk a bit more about why those are the priority? Is that just where the unmet need is the largest at the moment?
That is true. It is where the unmet need is right now. Even with JEDI, as part of our early adopters, they were just spelled all back fans. We had a couple of services, and we also had a couple of DAFA. So I think from when we came up with JEDI, when we had JEDI awarded, we were about to go on our go live date after February 2018. We had 12 early adopters. It was a good mix. Since that point on, the landscape has changed. Air Force went forward with Cloud One, so they have shored up a lot of their discrete cloud efforts within the Air Force, or the Department of Air Force, and now they have an enterprise contract with Cloud One. The Navy's doing the same for theirs, really the Department of Navy, and the Army is as well. And what we don't have are the combat commands have access, ubiquitous access to the cloud infrastructure and the associated services, and so too nor do the DAFAs. And so that's the reason why it's really what we're targeting first, and then opening the door and allowing for the services when they have their unmet needs. Many don't have Tactical Edge or IL6 or Top Secret. They'll be able to use JWCC. But I think we really need to be able to focus in, and so it's the combat commands. When you think about doing all the main C2, that's really going after the combatant commands. You think about what we're trying to do with AI and data acceleration, really targeting the combatant commands. So we know we have critical infrastructure shortfalls, and cloud compute and the associated infrastructure is a big one that we need to fill for the combatant commands.
As you mentioned earlier, when the JEDI procurement was still ongoing, there was a view, probably a correct view, that stitching together multiple CSPs into a coherent ecosystem was just going to be too hard. Any more you can say about why the department thinks that's changed at this point? And where I want to get to with this question is it a clear objective with JWCC to have one thing that is a department-wide enterprise cloud, or is it really four different service offerings kind of doing their own thing and serving different needs?
Yeah, so the way I look at it is that JWCC is acting as that enterprise cloud construct, so that once we have these awarded, it is open to the entire enterprise. All duty folks are able to leverage and use and to purchase and execute task orders against. That's not true for many of our other enterprise cloud contracts. They're either tailored to that specific organization, or it's at the contracting officer's purview to allow by exception. And so that, to me, is honoring what we were trying to do with JEDI in terms of establishing something that everyone in the department would be able to use. The difference is just because of how we evolved, mature, we didn't have much of a cloud presence when we conceived JEDI. We had pockets of it. We didn't have the robustness that we see now in 2020 to 2021. And so I think that's the reason why we don't need to mandate JWCC. There was a need to mandate JEDI back in the day. So you could just see how we're being very respectful of the fact of what the current landscape is and where the needs are, and ensuring that we're targeting those needs and meeting those needs, but allowing it to be accessible to all duties, which I think is incredibly important.
Given that that's the case and the military departments are going to be free to continue to use their own contracts for a while, is it a fair assumption that the total contract value for this is going to be probably substantially less than what was envisioned under JEDI? I don't know if y'all have numerical estimates that you can share at this point.
So I think it's out in public because it went out with the solicitation, but it's a $9 billion contract ceiling. And so that accounts for all the services and infrastructure associated with unclass to top secret, the tactical edge, and accounts for the ability to have multiple offers. And so that's what we're looking for right now. That's the projection that we've estimated it.
I also want to take a little bit of a step back and talk about, to the extent you can, how you landed on 4 vendors here. It wasn't that long ago, it was just back in the summer, where the department felt relatively strongly that there were only 2 companies that were going to be able to perform on this contract. I know you can't talk about individual companies' capabilities, I wouldn't expect you to, but can you say anything about what happened during that market research process that led you to expand the horizons a bit here?
Yeah, and I think that's the reason why it was so important in our pre-solicitation. We said based on our current market research, we could see 2 that met our requirements, but we knew that we needed to conduct extensive market research and do individual engagements with all 5 US-based hyperscale CSPs, and that's exactly what we did. The team engaged multiple rounds, had some fulsome conversations, reviewed capabilities, timelines, and based on that body of work, that drove to the recommendation and then eventually the decision to do the direct solicitations to the 4. So that's why it was so critical to do the market research. We wanted to take the time to be able to do that, and I'm very pleased that we did, because I think it's going to yield us better results.
And now, based on the fact that there are 4 companies, or we assume that there are going to be 4 awards here, I don't think that's a complete certainty yet here. I guess there could be a company that doesn't get an award, even though they've been issued a solicitation.
Yeah, you're correct. Yeah, so just because you get a direct solicitation does not mean that you're going to get an award. So we're still going through the process, but I think we just need to make that very clear. Just because you have a direct solicitation does not mean you're going to get a direct award.
Sure. But okay, so assuming we have multiple companies in play here, when it comes time to actually order services, if I'm, let's say, the Defense Logistics Agency, can I say I would like to order X number of units of this particular type of Oracle service, or do I need to submit a more vague requirement that then goes into this disabunculator that tells me what I'm getting back?
So using your example for DLA will partner with the JWCC PMO. They have a customer engagement team. They will review the requirements, and then the JWCC PMO customer engagement team will work very closely with DLA to make sure that they are tailoring the requirements in a manner that meets their mission and need. And then that is what will go into the automated provisioning tool to be able to execute and compete that task order.
If I'm the CIO of one of these agencies, though, and I know with certainty that this is the exact cloud service from this company that I want, will I ultimately be able to get that?
I think it's premature for me to say that. I think that's the reason why we want to make sure that we have, it's all about the requirements. So tailoring the requirements to be able to meet the mission need is critical, and that partnership with whomever the mission owner is, working with the JWCC program office that will have the technical acumen to be able to help shepherd that through, and then executing it through the provisioning tool is how I envision all of this taking place.
The one piece that we haven't gotten to yet about JWCC, and I think one of the ways it differs from some of the contracts that are out there already, is the multiple classification domains that you're going to start offering here relatively quickly. Can you talk about what sorts of services at those different levels are going to be available and how soon you think you can get them going?
Yeah, absolutely. So aisle 5, that's aisle 5, that's what we call unclassified. We'll have a cross domain solution for aisle 6, which is secret, cross domain solution, top secret, and then the tactical edge to be able to complement all of that. And those cross domain solutions are incredibly important because that is how you're going to be able to move data up and back down depending on where it needs to go and who needs access to it. And so this is something that, and supporting underlying cybersecurity infrastructure to be able to support what I just said, because I obviously made that sound very easy. But that's exactly what needs to take place, and right now that is what is missing from the department's ability to do Joint Albany C2 and the vision that Secretary Hicks has with the AI and data acceleration.
That portability across domains, obviously super important. What about portability across providers? Is there going to be specific language in the requirements of these contracts that it's seamless between various CSPs?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's the key, the portability across and amongst and within, because we know that we're going to be, and we already are, but we know that with what we're putting forward with JWCC, that we're going to be in a multi-cloud environment, and we still need to behave and work as a joint unit, as a joint workforce. And it shouldn't be independent of where our data is in the cloud. That is just a mechanism for us to be able to safely, securely, and confidentially move our data to be able to execute the mission that we need to do.
That technology is obviously available, but it's not easy. Is the government going to be the integrator to pull those various CSP service offerings together? Are you going to rely on third-party integrators? Do you know yet?
So we're the JWCC Program Management Office, which is the HAC, will have the responsibility of being an integrator with us and working very closely with the CSPs that do receive the direct reward to be able to make that happen. And that was the vision that we had when it was JEDI, and at the time the JEDI PMO, which was called the CCPO.
Slightly finer point on that. Is it going to be somewhat incumbent on the cloud service providers themselves to play nicely with each other, or is the government going to be building pipes? That's really my question.
So I think we're still working through that. So I don't have a very good answer for that, but I do understand the nuance we just provided. That's something that we have to work through. I just don't have a very good answer right now.
Danielle Metz, DoD's Deputy CIO for Information Enterprise. Again, that's from an exclusive interview we had in December about how the up to $9 billion Joint Warfighter Cloud Capability contracts will work over the coming years. I thought it was informative. Hopefully you did too. We'll take another break here, and when we come back, some of the Pentagon Inspector General's top priorities for overseeing DoD in the coming year. This is On DoD on Federal News Radio, part of the Federal News Network. I'm Jared Serban.
Each week on the Business of Government Hour, government executives and thought leaders join host Michael Keegan for an informative, insightful, and in-depth conversation on improving government and its effectiveness. These individuals are truly changing the way government does business. So join them each week on the Business of Government Hour. Find out how the business of government isn't business as usual. The Business of Government Hour, every Monday at 11 a.m. on Federal News Network.
Download the Federal News Network app and take the news that matters to you and your agency's mission on the go. Download the app to find out what each new law and policy will mean for civilian and defense employees and contractors. Download the app to keep up with cybersecurity and technology changes. Download the app to learn about changes to your pay and benefits. The Federal News Network app, sponsored by WAIPA. WAIPA, Group Term Life Insurance for Feds by Feds.
As a truck driver, I've learned how important road safety is. I know that large trucks need more time and room to stop. That's why I always hang back and follow other vehicles at a safe distance. Everyone can help keep our roads safe. Next time you're driving, try to remember to always give trucks extra space when you merge in front of them. Let's all plan to share the road safely. Learn how at www.sharetheroadsafely.gov.
We put our lives on the line for our country. We braved the unknown. We did what we were told. And we lit up. Our cigarette packs were as valuable as the packs on our back. Maybe more. At one point, cigarettes were part of our daily ration. Smoke 'em if you got 'em. And boy, we were smoking 'em. Humming a smoke was the norm. It was an escape from the reality of dirt, sweat, and forgetting how many days you were so far from home. Never had to worry so long as you had a light, and the smoking lamp was lit. If that was you then, get your lungs screened now. Surviving lung cancer starts with a scan. Learn more at screenyourlungs.org. And thank you for your service. This PSA was made possible by industry funding and guidance from lung cancer patient groups.
Thanks for listening to Federal News Radio. Welcome to Federal News Network. I'm Jared Serby. This is on DOT. And when you oversee an enterprise as big as the Defense Department, you need a plan. That's what the Office of the Inspector General does every year. A plan for the year ahead. The OIG's 2022 plan is out now. And for some of the highlights, my colleague Tom Temin talked with Courtney Phones. She heads up the OIG team that examines the department's top management challenges each year.
Let's begin with, you have really two documents here that are just out. One is the oversight plan of the OIG. The other is the OIG's assessment of the top management challenges for DoD in the year ahead. Safe to say then that the plan derives from what you see as the main challenges.
It certainly is. Our management challenges are the Inspector General's independent assessment of the DoD's top performance and management challenges. Some of these challenges are going to be long-standing, while others are more emergent, and some have been reshaped from previous years. We essentially discuss what our current challenges are, brainstorm some new topics, and that arrives us at our final decision for what our overall challenge topics will be, and that becomes the framework for our oversight plan. As we develop our oversight plan, we consider a lot of different things. We consider our previous work, any gaps in coverage we may have identified. We also look at the work of others in the oversight community, such as the Government Accountability Office or the service audit agencies and service inspector generals. We also get input from DoD senior leaders, and we get input from Congress, and we consider what the statutory requirements might be that we have to address in the upcoming year. So the documents are kind of developed concurrently. Ultimately, we want to make sure that our oversight projects align with those management challenges.
Sure. So it sounds like this also then is a great blueprint for the department employees themselves, the OIG office employees, so they know what's going to happen in the next 12 months or so.
Exactly, and they play a big role in developing what those projects will be based on their own expertise and experience.
And with respect to the GAO, they get their requests from Congress to do look-sees at different programs. So do you try to avoid what they're looking at, or do you maybe try to pile on with what they're looking at?
We take an approach of deconflicting with the Government Accountability Office, so we want to make sure that we're not duplicating the same work that they're doing. We may, like you said, go in a little bit deeper on a topic, or we may